Okay, Brent.
Okay, Josh.
This is Speak Now or Whatever. This is our interview with Dr. Daniel Petersen, the singer of Blaster the Rocket Man.
Or Rocket Boy.
We don't get clarification about that.
No.
But we're going to say Blaster the Rocket Man for these purposes. Dr. Otto Rocket, the singer of Blaster the Rocket Man. And he talks to us about what he's been up to these last 20 years, actually. A band that we have loved forever, a band that has inspired us, and a band that we hold in high regard. And so we talked to him about the band's history, origin, what they're up to now, what they're planning on doing in the future. And what I'm wondering, Brent, is when's the first time that you heard about Blaster the Rocket Man?
1999.
Awesome. Somebody just gave you a CD, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool. And for me, I saw them live. And so I got to talk to Dr. Otto about this, about seeing them live for the first time and just seeing a great punk band play and a band that had an unbeatable live performance.
Mm-hmm.
And we get into that a little bit with him about his influences live and in the punk world. And so we also get to a little detail that he gets into with us about Robert Pattinson. And I can't wait for everybody to find this out.
Absolutely.
So this is our interview with Dr. Daniel Petersen, a.k.a. Otto Rocket, a.k.a. Dr. Otto from Blaster the Rocket Man. This is great. Well, okay, so we're super excited to talk to you. As I may have already said multiple times, we're giant fans of your band and have been for a very long time. And so it was exciting for you to kind of connect with us first, which I can't figure out how it happened. I guess you heard the first podcast that we did somehow?
Yeah, I mean, because I just made that, what is it, Instagram.
Yeah, that was brand new. Okay.
So I was like, I think I've just seen various, podcasts and different things by getting on there. And I checked your guys's out. And when you guys mentioned us, I think it was in that first episode.
It was.
And now I'm forgetting what you guys talked about at this point. Because there's been a couple other places where I was really surprised people mentioned us where I wasn't expecting it.
Sure.
Because, if I see Blaster, I'll go listen, there's only like 2 or something, but like on a podcast, I'll go listen to that. But this, it wasn't advertised as such. So it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, yeah.
That's awesome. But yeah, well, and that's really exciting that you even connected with us in the first place because that made this possible. So we're really thankful for that. And so,
Cool.
So from that, getting to connect with you, and we were thrilled to hear from you, but also surprised because we did not know you lived in Scotland. I'm sure that's public knowledge elsewhere. Had no idea. So tell us about life in Scotland. You said you've been there now since 2002?
Yeah. I was surprised you guys didn't know that. It's kind of cool, actually. I really like that. Like for some people, they, Blaster's like this more, what do you call it? Almost mythic thing,
Yeah.
You don't know about my life or anything after that. It's just like, and they're like, oh, he lives in Scotland. Yeah. We moved here way back in 2002. Back then, it was kind of considered sort of a Christian ministry type of thing. I mean, we've moved on from all that kind of stuff a long time ago, but yeah, that was kind of one of our motivations for coming over here and working with churches and student groups and things like that. But now it's just, it's just the place I live. It's just like, I've lived here more. I was thinking about this the other day. I've lived here more of my adult life than I did in the States. So it's pretty weird. But it's I think people think of it quite. especially Americans, think of it kind of idealistically,
Yeah.
and the whole of the UK, everybody's just like, oh, the UK, it's just a regular place, it definitely has, beautiful aspects and interesting cultural things and all kinds of stuff, but it also has just, boring, everyday, shitty stuff like anywhere else,
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a regular place.
I live in the big city, Glasgow, so yeah, it's a city,
Sure. And you teach, correct?
I did for a while.
Okay.
I did for a while. I'm kind of in a transition phase. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do because I taught really, really part-time for about 6 years, kind of during my PhD and then some after. But, it's just like this really, what do they call it? A teaching assistant sort of lowly position, that doesn't pay much. And, you only like lead an hour-long seminar or something and then mark grade, I should say, a bunch of papers, essays. I forget what's called what in the UK and the USA, but anyway, but yeah, you grade their work and stuff like that. And it was good. It was good, but it just kind of wasn't going anywhere. And they weren't paying me for as much as I was working.
I got you.
But yeah, so now I still write academically. I'm working on hopefully my last academic essay for a while right now on zombies. But yeah, so I do academic work in that sense, but that also doesn't pay. So yeah, I'm kind of working on what's next and kind of trying to return to some creative writing and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay.
On zombies, that's fascinating.
I would expect nothing less.
Yeah, I know, right? That's great.
Well, I had to, I was not a good student back in high school and stuff. And, I didn't even start university stuff until my late 30s. But yeah, so I had to pick stuff I was really passionate about. So when I did my PhD, it was like, it's got to be about monsters. So I continue to sort of work in the field of monsters and that kind of thing.
Yep. It's not going away anytime soon. Cool. Well, so to go back to this kind of random point real quick, when you and I were talking on Instagram, it was in reference to the sweatshirt that I have, the Blaster, the Rocket Man sweatshirt. And Brent had thought that this was like a site that you ran. Like maybe this was like your site, you were putting all the Blaster stuff up there, but we didn't realize that it was just the artwork going to them and Threadless putting it out. But we were just happy that we could actually get some, that it's like it's available.
Well, I did set up the site. I mean, it's their site, but I did set it up, and it was for that exact reason. Like I knew I'm just not that guy that's going to like organize things. I have no business sense and no organizational skills or any of that kind of stuff. So, but I knew people wanted shirts and stuff. And I was like, I just need to find a site that will make the stuff nice. We'll get it out to people promptly and everything. It'll probably be a bit overpriced. And I won't hardly like, I think I get maybe 10% or something of whatever's made from that. Like gets funneled back to me. But I mean, it's not much. Like I see people make, $50 and more dollar orders and stuff. And I get like, $4.95 or something.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
Well, I can vouch for the fact that the sweaters are comfortable,
good.
that it did arrive promptly. And
Nice.
I even got a free one because the first one they sent, it's a different fit. It's like a thinner, you've seen it. It's like this thinner hoodie. What's it called? It's French something? I can't remember. But it's a thinner hoodie. It's not like, this big bulky cotton hoodie.
Yeah.
And so I ordered the size I would always order, and it was just way too tight. And so now I was like, I don't know what to do. So I asked them, and I was like, I can send this back if you guys just send me like a just slightly larger size. And they said, no, you keep it. We make these custom. So you keep that one. We'll just send you another one. So now,
that's excellent.
Yep. So now my son has one and I have one, and we're the only people in Birmingham that do. So that's what we take pride in.
Yeah, it's got to be quite a distinction to have any Blaster merch. I mean, it's like there's 100 of you worldwide or something.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because you used to just have to go to eBay to find stuff,
I know.
especially anything Blaster was just kind of, somebody was maybe putting it up or whatever.
Yeah,
but.
yeah, totally.
Facebook Marketplace.
This is exactly how I think Robert Pattinson got a hold of a Blaster shirt. I don't know if you've ever heard that story.
No. Tell us this story, please.
Oh, man. I'm going to bring it up again on the Blaster socials and stuff because we haven't talked about it in years. Because I don't know, it was like 10 years ago or something. Somebody just like sent me a link showing him wearing a Blaster shirt on a talk show. And my immediate thought was, first of all, I didn't know if it was real. I thought, somebody was like, somebody had just done that for fun or something. And when I ascertained that it was real, I was like, here's what, immediately, I was like, he has a stylist. The stylist saw the shirt, doesn't know who it is, just thought it looked kind of fun and cool. Got it for him, said, wear this on the show tonight. He wore it. That's it. And then there was all this speculation. No, I think he's a Blaster fan and all this kind of stuff. And finally, we all saw the clip on the show, and he's sitting there going, like, yeah, I don't know what this is. And like, and he was like a real kid about it. He was like, it's probably some white power group or something. I was like, fuck you too, Robert.
Ouch.
Sorry, you can cut out my swearing if you.
That went south. Oh gosh, man! I thought that was going to be like a winning moment for Pattinson.
Yeah,
for the Batman wearing Blaster gear. Okay, so this is one of the things that Brent and I always do. The reason we started this is we love connecting the dots. It's the word that we use all the time, phrase we use, with our history and the artist history and how we intertwine and how we found you and also just how you found the things that you found. So we became fans. I became a fan late 90s, 1997, when it was kind of overflowing here in Birmingham, Alabama, this underground Christian music scene. And I'm sure at some point it's like you probably saw this bubble over too and saw this happening and all over the country, but especially here in Birmingham it was. And at the time, we only knew of one place where you could go to see punk bands, hardcore bands, and indie bands that are of that genre, that ilk. And so every time I went to a show, I was seeing a new band, someone I had no clue of. There was no way to find out about them any other way except we go to these shows. So that's come to this one show one day, and a friend of mine's surf rock band was opening for you guys, and then you guys headlined, and you were wearing, it's like construction jumpsuits, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even know how to define that. It's like a jumpsuit, but it's like a window washer type suit. And you had multiple masks and crawling on the stage many times. I think on All the Way to the Blood Bank is when you were crawling around on the stage. And it floored me. It was just so exciting because, number one, I love punk music, but I was just getting to see how bombastic this could be and just how real and how energetic and then just how engaging you guys were, and just became a huge fan from that point on. Went and bought the Succulent Space Food CD immediately, and it's the only one I ever owned of you guys, but wore that one out. And so that's how I became a huge fan. And I think somebody gave you a CD, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So like in high school, somebody gave me a CD, and I'm a lot younger than Josh is, but somebody gave me a CD and was like, look, you need to start here, And it's funny because I actually attribute my love for Me Without You with Blaster. And it's weird because when Me Without You first started, it was like very much kind of this interesting stage presence. You had Aaron Weiss just kind of like jumping all over stage, like doing all these things. And that EP came out and it sounded very eerie, kind of very horror, like maybe horror hardcore kind of. I don't know. But I attribute it to a lot of like what you guys did, because it was such a unique sound and it was just so mesmerizing that there was like, you could equate all of these different types of sounds that give it more of this horror feel into even, at that time, Christian music or whatever, And so it was really fascinating to see.
It was an experience.
Yes.
I mean, for sure, it was an experience to see you play. I wasn't just watching a band and getting down with it and enjoying, a good punk band. I was hearing terrific punk music, and very old school punk and surf music. But then getting the experience of very similar that you would get with Me Without You. You got people crawling on the ground. Now we have werewolves. Audience members just trying to figure out what's happening. I think I was pretty much right up front the entire time when I saw you play. That's the only time I've seen you too. That one time, I just never got the chance again. But I think I was right up front, just engaged and just super excited to see a new band. But I think I just stood there with my mouth open and eyes wide the whole time, just watching from mask to mask and change to change, different songs. But yeah, that's our entrance into your band. And we were, I don't know how much you guys probably toured. I mean, during that period, 90s, late 90s. I mean,
Yeah.
you started around, you started around like 94, 95, something like that. And so you probably made your way around the country a pretty good bit, right?
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah, I was wondering, those are really cool stories. I was wondering, you said 97?
97 is when I first saw you.
In Birmingham,
Alabama.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. See, I'm forgetting when we did this tour of the South. It was like our first tour, and one of only two. And I was thinking that was kind of 98, but it might have been 97.
Well, you could be right. You could be right.
I mean,
right around the same time.
We did sometimes drive a ways just for a show, you know, so it could have been one of those as well. So I can't remember for sure, but it sounds, man, I didn't realize. And also if it was 97 or even 98, I didn't realize we were already doing the jumpsuits and masks and stuff. We always came up with something, and it was like just a wide variety of things, but I didn't remember getting some of the masks and stuff for a while, but yeah, it probably was like all much earlier than I remember and stuff. Yeah, it's like I really have no sense of exact chronology at this point.
That's why I think that's why we started the podcast. It's because what we realized is that we do this constantly. There's nothing that we can't say to each other or have a conversation about that we can't go, well, that was in 06. Yeah, but so no, remember it was actually 07. Yeah. No, remember it was this other thing. We do that constantly.
Yeah, it kind of works with, so like 97 to 99, it's fine. That's all 1 year, whatever.
One big year.
If you're within 2 years, roughly, that's
right.
Fine, most of the time. Yes. Yeah, it's really nice. I'm glad you thought, I'm also glad you caught us on a good show. I mean, we didn't always have great shows, depending on who was in the band, how well practiced we were, what kind of internal things were going on or external things, or all kinds of things, but it sounds like we were all right. I remember if it was that southern tour, that was a great tour. We had a really good time, a lot of good shows. You said a surf rock band was playing. We weren't playing with the Huntingtons, were we?
No. We know the Huntingtons, and we were fans of the Huntingtons. This was a local band from here with a guy that I knew in the band, and they only played like several shows or like for a year or so, and then they weren't a band anymore, just a local band.
I have a feeling that was we probably did just like drive over for that show, or maybe we found a few shows around somewhere. Because I think when we toured the South, we toured with the Huntingtons. But yes,
that's cool. That's cool. Hadn't heard that name in a long time either.
Yeah,
yeah. And the Me Without You thing is that's really cool to hear. That's flattering.
Yeah.
Because I don't know much about them. I've always like super respected them and what I've heard. The music I've heard and things about them, and I'm like, really authentic sound and guys and what have you, and that's cool. And it's funny, there's this weird tenuous connection there, in that there was a guy here, a Scottish guy here in Glasgow, that one time when Me Without You came through on a tour, he started talking to Aaron. And allegedly, they started talking about Blaster, and that Aaron was a fan of Blaster or something like that. I still kind of wonder if it was this other guy being a bit overeager and kind of translating that he had heard of Blaster into that he was a fan. But he up and gets me on the phone so that Aaron and I can have a conversation, because I wasn't going to that show, and so that Aaron and I could have this conversation. And so we spoke on the phone while he was in Glasgow. I can't really remember what we talked about. I remember trying to stop by at a Cornerstone after that. Must have been one of our reunions, their tour bus, to say hi to him, but he wasn't around or something like that. But yeah, so there's like this really vague little connection there where I've actually spoken to Aaron twice awesome. On the phone. But
I love that. Yeah.
You did talk to Aaron.
Yeah.
That one
I talked to him at that show when that EP just came out.
Right.
Because again, I was fascinated.
Huge fan.
What they were doing. But anyways,
awesome.
Yeah, I attribute a lot of that love to you guys. And, that was some fun.
It's funny how all that's connected, isn't it?
Yeah.
But so you guys are from Indianapolis. The band is from Indianapolis, Indiana, formed there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. The very, very first incarnation formed in Indianapolis, and then kind of quickly almost reformed in Evansville, which is 4 hours southern Indiana.
Okay, cool.
but then I moved back to, basically we were Indianapolis, Evansville, and then like a hybrid band of 2 guys from Evansville and 2 guys from Indianapolis. Yeah.
Nice. So not knowing much about Indiana, and I actually had to look this up a little bit. Punk bands from Indiana, the scene in Indiana or Indianapolis, maybe, and like more locally where you were. I'm looking up bands and researching like who came out of there, like all these different punk bands. So apparently Sloppy Seconds did. Older punk band, Leftover Crack, and
don't know them.
Yeah, they were on Fat Records. Still probably are on Fat Records. Have been forever. Ataris are apparently from there.
Oh, that's right.
Didn't know that. And Squirt Gun.
Okay.
As well. So
yeah, that's I vaguely heard of Squirt Gun. I think it was just one guy, maybe the founder of Ataris or something, was from Indiana or Indianapolis, perhaps, and then maybe moved out to California or something. I remember looking this up once because I heard they were from Indianapolis, and I'm pretty sure we had some interaction with that guy at one point through a friend and yada yada. But yeah, so there's another big punk band. I mean, they're not big; they're small in the scheme of punk things, but they're probably the biggest in the history of punk from Indianapolis, called Zero Boys.
Oh yeah, I saw that name too. Yeah, don't know much about them. Yeah,
80s punk, but yeah, they're from here as well. But yeah, Sloppy Seconds were a big deal when we were very first starting. Yeah.
Really good band. So when you guys formed, what was your scene like when you formed there locally, whether it was the Christian underground or whether it was just the regular secular underground music scene?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been thinking a bit about that. Sorry if I keep turning around here. My dog is crying about something.
Yeah, because he's not being asked a question. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. He wants to be. You want to be on the podcast? Here you go.
Oh, look.
This is August.
Oh, beautiful. Hey, August.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot going on. It was a pretty busy scene, to be honest, for a town that's not, it's a proper big city, but it's no Chicago or even a Detroit or any of these, even as a Midwestern city, it's one of the lesser ones, I'd say. But there was plenty going on always. There was a punk scene, a hardcore scene there. However, also because this scene was smaller, you didn't necessarily have really strict categories. So you would have like a punk band, a metal band, a funk. There was a lot of weird, like funk hybrid stuff going on. I think, inspired by, I don't know, Fishbone and Chili Peppers and whatever.
Wow. Okay.
Stuff going on as well. And just like alternative bands and all that, on one bill, a lot of that kind of thing would happen. So it's like a mixture in that way. There were a lot of, there were some standard sort of venues that did all the live shows, but then there was a lot of people throwing stuff together at the local, Knights of Columbus or I can't remember the names of these types of like community buildings or whatever and that kind of stuff until we made too much of a ruckus and then they never let us come back and stuff like that.
Yes.
All that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of like self-organizing. It was a pretty, pretty DIY sort of scene in that way too. Just to mention a couple other bands that were on my radar and kind of influenced us would be another band called Scary Tweezers, which are worth looking up. They're sort of one album that they have, because I did have some precedent for, like sci-fi-horror type punk, besides, the Misfits or whatever, so there's like Sloppy Seconds has some of that kind of stuff, and then Scary Tweezers and things. And there was this other band called Modern Vending that was just kind of it was more their live show and the intensity of it and stuff like that kind of impressed upon my imagination, so that, I was thinking about that kind of stuff when we started the band. But yeah, there was just a lot going on, despite not being a really big city or a really big scene. Also, as I've mentioned before, there's a difference. Where are you guys from, by the way?
Birmingham, Alabama.
Right. Okay. So you're in Alabama. I don't know what it's like in a place like that, but in the Midwest, the Midwest is not cool. It's not like the coasts, and maybe some other types of places. So you kind of, you have like a rumor of what's going on. So like, it's just like kind of hilarious that we wanted an element of surf in what we did from the very beginning. But it's like, what business did we have with, surf music and stuff like that, with all these cornfields around us and stuff like that, but yeah, so and there was this sense too of just like, there are a lot of people trying to be kind of pure about it. We're totally hardcore, we're emo, we're punk, but for us, for sure, and I think for some others, it was just like, whatever we like, that's going in the stew here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We like surf, if we like punk, if we like death rock, if we like cow punk, if we like country, and whatever it is, it's like all going in there.
Yes. If we like werewolf masks, we're going to have werewolf masks.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
But so like you probably, like I'm guessing, so the independent scene, like there was room for everybody, it kind of sounds like everybody's still kind of figuring out, but people were more purist about it, but you probably stood out a bit, I would imagine, whether you were playing secular shows or more Christian-based shows. You probably stood out a bit based on how thematic your material was and just your, like I said, your live show, period.
Yeah, that's another, I forgot to mention the whole like Christian or non-Christian sort of scenes and stuff. What I was just talking about there was describing the sort of just general scene in Indianapolis, actually. So, and there were Christians, we knew each other. In fact, that we kind of almost in a way grew out of a Christian punk band that came before us called Three Nails, which at the they had a few like demos and things. And at the time they were, kind of getting known in that Christian underground. This is back in the time of, Crucified and stuff like that. And it was their bass player and guitarist that then played with me and my brother for like one show. but like that bassist, he's the one who wrote the music for King of the Beach, for example. Like,
oh yeah, great song.
He's called Corey Carlton. But so like what was I saying there? So that's like the general scene. There wasn't, when we first started, there wasn't a Christian scene, I would say. And it was down in Evansville where they had this Christian coffee house place that hosted a bunch of local like punk and alternative shows by Christians and stuff, but that also a whole bunch of non-Christians came to because there wasn't a lot going on down there. That's where I think we got more hooked into an actual Christian scene to some degree. And then of course, when we started making recordings, and people, it was Boot to Head Records and stuff was like a Christian label, so that kind of injected us into the Christian scene. But it always made a difference that we started in the kind of in the non-Christian scene, just because, we would just play whatever shows we could with other bands and mostly at first like non-Christians and stuff. And then that kind of stayed with us even to our last tour. And a lot of this came through Caleb kind of making the effort to get us into places. But like we would play a Christian organized show one night and then like just a non-Christian organized show the next night, and that kind of thing. So that was, we always kind of felt in and out of that. And I never, like I grew up on Christian music. Like I'm dyed in the wool Christian rock guy. My dad was a Christian rocker, but once we started the band, I was never that into the whole Christian scene. Like I liked a lot of different bands, but mainly from a little before that. I don't know if you've heard of Blonde Vinyl and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Mike Knott and Fluffy and Breakfast with Amy and of course Crucified before that. That would have been more my frame of reference than Tooth and Nail and stuff. But yeah, I wasn't against it, but it just didn't, I wasn't super into it. And I didn't really want to be, I didn't, obviously we were like very overtly Christian, but I didn't really want to be thought of as like a Christian band or just part of this Christian scene or whatever. But it also, like so many people found, it gives you a lot of opportunities,
sure.
being in that scene. So it's hard to just say no completely to that, so so it's just like a big mixture in that way.
Sure. And here in Birmingham, like I said, that there was the specific time in the 90s where we're listening to all these regular bands that we love already. We're listening to Descendants. We're listening to, NoFX, all these great bands. Then we're finding out about bands like you. And then there's places where it's like primarily Christian shows. Then there's places where there's non-Christian shows. Then somehow it all just started bleeding together here in our city. And I think the scene just there was a huge mutual respect where it just, they all just started participating together. So it's very, cool. Very similar. I think a lot of bands were just like, let's just be a good band and let's put on a good show and play with other good bands.
Yeah.
Totally. Finding camaraderie that way.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. I don't think it was like that everywhere, but, and even in Indianapolis, it wasn't so much like that, just because there wasn't a big Christian presence of bands in my mind, at least early on, for that. But I don't think we were the only Christian band that would just sometimes play at regular gigs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more like a general scene and a few Christian bands in it rather than like a big mixture, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally
I'm
understand.
also curious, where do you remember where you got Succulent Space Food when you went out and got it?
I certainly do, because that's all we do all the time is go over every detail of everything we did regarding music. So when I saw your band, it was at this place called The Crush here in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't exist anymore. But at the time, it was like the hub of the only place we knew where we could see these kind of bands. And we had just met this guy named Chad, got another guy that we interviewed for this podcast that we've had a relationship with for years. We had just met this guy named Chad and realized he has his own shop where he somehow has tapped into all the resources of all things underground Christian. So he built this shop, very tiny shop that is, I mean, really no bigger than like a nice bathroom. And you could go there and you could get all these CDs from these bands that maybe we had just seen and we just started hearing about, like literally just started learning about. He had their CDs, and then he had merch. He had like their T-shirts, and then he had skateboard decks and Star Wars toys, and just, it was a really cool little shop. So I had just seen you, didn't know where to get your CD, or just didn't get it at the show, and then met him, went to his shop, and I was like, that's what I wanted. That's the thing I'm looking for. So that shop, anyway, that shop was called Slacker 66, run by our friend Chad.
Yeah, I listened to that episode. I heard you guys talking about it. I didn't quite realize that's exactly what it was. That's so cool. I've been because I'm just now kind of like fully coming back to the whole Blaster thing in the past year or something, and starting to freshly think about it all and try to remember things and whatever. And I've been blown away how remembering and realizing how what's the word? How, I can't think of anything but buoyed up, but how kind of supported and spread around we were by so many other people. Like whether it was like people just having like a CD like that in their shop that otherwise you'd have to like mail off for or something, or people like making because we were always terrible about making merch and stuff. So people are just like making their own merch and stuff, and just like just promoting us in various ways, just out of sheer enthusiasm. We were just like doing our thing. It was kind of like all we could do just to like make the music and perform it, you know. And everybody else was like, "Okay, that's fine. We'll do the rest."
We'll make the T-shirts. We'll make the stickers. Yeah,
which is really nice. Like, it's amazing. I can't believe what a little I'm sure it wasn't just about our band, but some of us bands were like just kind of made in part by people responding in that way, and it's like a real community type thing, which is cool.
Sure, I think you use the right word there when you say community, because it is cool to see that when it happens. It's like it's not just you the band, but now it's you the band and the audience and the crowd. It's the community. It really is the community. Like being a part of all of it together. This is really, really cool.
Yeah, and I'm glad, and it's good to hear about your like live experience too, because like that was always really important to me. Even like before the recordings, my first thing I was excited about doing, being in a band, was being on a stage, playing, jumping around, connecting with the crowd. And I had, sort of, punk icons in mind that I thought of as connecting with the crowd that way. And that's who I was imitating and emulating. And it's just cool that like it worked. Like people responded, and we were having that, creating that community get together, and then sort of recordings and stuff kind of come out of that. And so that's really cool.
That was exactly what I was going to ask you next, was about the live performance and the live aspect of it. Because I know you've been asked, I know the band has been asked over the years, what are your influences? Like your main influences, tracing it back to the punk bands that you love and that kind of thing. But you just said it, so I have to pry into it, about your punk icons that you looked up to with regards to live performance that inspired you. Literally, like, or inspired the whole band. It's like, we want to get on stage and do that.
Yeah, I think it does. I need to figure out a way to talk more about the other guys in the band, because I kind of tend to just talk about my brother and I.
That's Dave, right?
Dave, yeah. And I mean, the reason is we're kind of the founding members, and he wrote most of the music, and I wrote most of the lyrics, and we were the two guys almost always in the band, other people brought things to that as well. But yeah, the driving vision behind it definitely came initially from me, and then from my brother and I both. But yeah, so like I don't even know, to some degree, nobody else was actually as into, or at least in the original versions of the band, nobody else was quite as into punk as I was. Like everybody loved it. We all liked punk, but they just had a broader palette than me, and they might have been willing to go in different directions with music, but I was like, no, we have to be punk, But I got really bored with punk really fast. It's still my all-time favorite music, and I still get bored by it really fast. So it's like this mixture of like absolute focus on punk, but it's got to be creative, it's got to be something weird with it, And so in addition to so I've mentioned quite a few times, and I'll just keep this up because it is true. As a teenager, I saw Mike Knott from LSU and all that play at a Cornerstone in particular, and his stage presence was so theatrical and weird, and he was rubbing things all over his face and he was screaming and just it was so intense. And then the other Mike that inspired me is Mike Patton from Faith No More and Mr. Bungle and stuff.
Okay.
And just seeing, him on TV and stuff, and his craziness and jumping around and whatever. And those two guys, that was the first time I had this desire in me, like I want to do that. You know what I mean? I want to have that energy, but then, just a lot of it, again, this Midwestern thing, and also coming at it, more in the 90s, I was reading a lot about punk and the old punk scene and stuff. So I would hear or read interviews or whatever, and hear guys in Black Flag and Minor Threat and everything, talking about their live shows and what happened and the ways they connected with the crowds and how they wanted it to be confrontational, but not necessarily, an antagonism, but this connection that could be intense, it could involve fighteting or whatever, but, and I was just drawn to all on the one hand, just that theatrical stage performance that's on the stage, but on the other hand, that connection with the crowd that can blur the line between stage and crowd and stuff like that, which that sounds a bit wanky, but
but it's true. It's true.
Yeah. But yeah, so all that kind of stuff inspired me. And then again, those more local bands, some of them, again, that one band, Modern Vending, they just had this really, their singer had this weird presence on stage where he was just jumping around, walking around, stalking around, and then he would hawk these big loogies up into the air and then catch them again in his mouth, and and I was just anything that was visceral and gross and funny at the same time. I was never inspired by G.G. Allen or anything like that. That didn't really do anything for me. But it was a similar energy, but less needing to be
hurt myself and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and super transgressive and stuff. It's no, if we're going to transgress, it's going to be hilarious. We're all going to do it together. So I don't know if you've ever heard that. Sometimes I used to chew up dog biscuits from a box of dog biscuits and spit them on the crowd and stuff like that. And it was a consensual thing, because they knew I was about to do it. And they were those who wanted to be part of that were crowding to the front to get spit on and whatever.
That's what they paid the ticket for. They need the dog biscuits.
That's right.
I didn't see that. You didn't do that in Birmingham. One time I saw you.
Right.
We just had the masks, but I know you wore pantyhose on your head. I saw many pictures with you pantyhose on your head though too.
Yeah, I used to put those on just right as I Killed the Checkout Girl started.
Oh man, I love that song so much. Right.
Yeah.
I had to find out about that song later because when I found out about you, it was through Succulent Space Food, and Kill the Checkout Girl was on. Is that on Disasteroid?
Yeah.
Okay, so the cassette or whatever it was, and then eventually put together in that one big discography, Anatomy of a Monster, right? Which is all that you ever did, pretty much just put into that one compilation, right?
Well, everything except The Monster Who Ate Jesus.
Exactly.
Yeah, it has live versions of stuff from The Monster Who Ate Jesus, but yeah. I don't love that compilation. Mainly, I just don't like that live show is the worst. I wish that was not. I wish that had never been recorded and put out. That was just this one off. I never did that weird in between songs sort of persona that I was doing that night. I never did that before or after. It was this one off thing that I was trying.
Yes.
And our band was at that time it wasn't any of the original members, and they were kind of in and out of being able to sort of play the songs and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a bit of an odd show to be the one that's now out there live.
Yeah. But what's cool, though,
I was just going to say, now that I think about it, I Killed the Checkout Girl is actually another one that was written by that very first band in Indianapolis. And I think Corey Carlton wrote that one too. I forget, there are a couple of these key early songs that were not by my brother or me.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so the way I found out about Kill the Checkout Girl, though, is because on Succulent Space Food, you did a Marvel tag on that album. You did a secret song, and the secret song was an entire live show at the end of that CD. Do you remember this?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So was that a Cornerstone performance? Okay. That's what I thought. Yeah. I thought that was, but that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing as on Anatomy of a Monster, right?
No, yeah, that's really like Anatomy.
Totally different show.
Yeah, the show on Anatomy of a Monster is from like 2000 or 2001 or something like that, like way late in the day. And again, like after the original band had even in any form had broken up. Whereas, yeah, that one on Succulent Space Food is like the classic band of like me, Chris, Mike, and Dave, and Cornerstone 96, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was listening to that. I never listened to that much. I thought it was like too, like it wasn't good fidelity, and I just didn't care for it. But I was listening to it again. I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. I don't mind this so much.
Yeah. I loved it. I didn't care if it was lo-fi or not. It was great because I didn't get to see you play again. And so I at least had that. I had like that live experience, like getting a live record. I had that on there.
Yeah. I was wondering too, if that like, I've never thought of this, but I'm like, did that like add a little bit to the mystique? Because like if people who are hearing us for the first time hear that album and we have this like whole live show where, and I remember being surprised at that show. I'm pretty sure that was our first big Cornerstone show. We played the skate ramp the year before that, and being surprised how everybody was like singing along and stuff on key points. And like, there's a part where everybody's singing Calling Mothra. I don't know if you remember that part.
Yes, I do.
Song.
Yes, I do.
And the whole crowd's just going, like really like sweetly going, Calling Mothra. And it's just like, if people are getting that CD for the first time, they might be like, whoa, so these guys like have like a whole fan base or something that like sing along to their songs and stuff. But never even heard of these guys,
Oh man, that's awesome. You had this CD, right? The same CD we're talking about.
Yeah.
Succulent Space Food. So this whole live part there at the very end, like the entire thing.
Yes.
Yeah,
so Man-Eating Plants was
Man-Eating Plants
was probably my favorite. Absolutely. Just quick song, but I loved it. So good.
Absolutely. So now are you playing any music at all right now? I mean, you talked a little bit about what you're up to in Scotland, but are you, like, other than reviving Blaster, which we'll talk about here in a minute, are you doing anything else creatively, musically? You carve out time for that?
I haven't for a long time. I was trying to think about this the other day. I think the last time I sang for anything to be on a recording, and I think that was something like 2017 or something like that, or 2018, because as often as not, every 3, 4, or 5 years when I'm back visiting the States, my brother will just like force me to make a little demo. He'd be like, come on, we're going to write a song. We're going to make a little demo. And like some years ago, we had done this song called Swamp Thing. And these are always like he's put together some riffs ahead of time, but even those are kind of more like demos and stuff that he's done. And then I just have to like come up with lyrics and vocals like on the spot.
Yeah.
Like it's like on the day. So we had done this song called Swamp Thing that's out there online somewhere. And then this other time I had just been speaking at a conference about the author that I mainly focused on for my PhD called R.A. Lafferty. So a bunch of his stories were in my mind. So I just made these two songs out of his, kind of like I did with C.S. Lewis, on the Monster of Jesus. I just kind of did it with this other author, and we had two songs. What are they called? Devilfish is one, and the other is The Fledgling. Yeah. Anyway, so I sang on those, made recording, and those are somewhere online as well. But and they're just demos. I think they're pretty promising as demos. But yeah, so I think that was the last time that I actually sung for something. So yeah, I'm a little rusty on that. I never stop writing like lyrics and stuff.
Cool.
That just always comes to me, and I've just got files and files of like sketches of lyrics and that's what I always did. Every album we made, it was like I had a notebook full of unfinished song ideas that I had to like, okay, I got to turn this into something now.
Mm-hmm. You always got to have something in your arsenal,
Yeah.
That's terrific. What about
but
this
my
thing?
brother, sorry, I was just going to say, my
Go
brother has been sending me a bunch of tracks of more demos of his stuff. And I've been coming up with lyrics and vocal ideas for those. So we are going to write some new music together. It won't be Blaster, at least not to begin with. But yeah, just to kind of get that ball rolling again. And, we're just going to, get some stuff made across the ocean for a little while here until we get a chance to then kind of really get into a studio somewhere. But I don't know for sure where it'll go, to what degree, it will be, but something will happen and we're going to make a go of it and see what we think of it. Like, is this working?
That's cool. Well, you did do one thing. I did look this up to listen to this. Is it Voice of the Mysterons?
Oh, yeah.
Now, that was maybe, 12, 13 years ago, something like that. Tell me about that, because that sounds pretty cool, too.
Yeah. Roughly, I want to say that was around 2003 to 2010.
Okay.
Kind of off and on. And it was just when I moved here, within like a year, somebody who did know of Blaster, because there's not a Christian scene in the UK.
Okay.
I mean, maybe some people would say there is, but it's nothing like the States, like nothing at all. And most people have, that whole thing that we all like sort of grew up with and know about and stuff. And, like, they've never even heard of it. They don't know anything about it. But a few people had, for example, heard of Blaster. And this one guy who had his own band called Voice of the Mysterons, and they were just an instrumental sort of, people called it like sort of prog metal meets like art punk Devo type stuff. But anyway, they asked me to kind of like do like a spoken word or something on one song, and I ended up doing more like vocals for it. And then I just talked my way into being their singer. I was just like, why don't I just sing on all these tracks? Let me and they were like, okay, fine.
That's hilarious. I heard it.
So,
it's hyper. It's like I can hear your voice and I can hear like Blaster elements in there, but it's like hyper focused or hyperactive Blaster almost, the energy that is.
Yeah, I was, it's one of those things where I was it wasn't exactly my vision of music, though. I mean, a lot of aspects of it I really do like. But other people were writing music and I wasn't directing that so much. I had some involvement, but it was just a matter of like, here's my opportunity. These guys are playing. They'll let me sing, so I'm going to work with this,
Mm-hmm.
And then, I did tend to, both in terms of like the actual lyrics and the vocals, I was in a very hyper mood and mode. And our live shows as well. Some of them were like more intense than Blaster.
Oh, I can't imagine that actually.
But it was cool. I think we put out this one sort of album. I think Boot to Head put it out, in fact. And that was okay. But we did this other sort of EP online that I liked better, I think, musically and stuff. But yeah. So
Great.
we did some stuff.
That's awesome. Well, I was excited to listen to it. And I'm also excited because according to you on Instagram, Blaster is back.
This is true.
I didn't make this up. Blaster is back. These were your words.
Yeah.
So tell us what's happening. Tell us what the plans are for 2025, what you guys are shooting for, or what your hopes are.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much a surprise to me too. I was just like, I didn't, I got to tell you, man, it is really weird to have, quote unquote, this like sort of active fan base after all these years when we haven't done anything.
Yeah.
Put nothing out, played no shows, nothing. And I forget why I started that Facebook group or Facebook page for Blaster, I don't know, something like 10 years ago or something. I think it was actually when that Robert Pattinson thing came out. I think somebody talked me into it. Now I remember. They were like, you got to jump on this. This might be a thing. I was like, oh, fine, I'll start a Blaster page. And then I remember about 2 years ago, maybe it was only a year ago, I don't know. But I hadn't even paid attention to how many people were following it. And it was like 1,000 or a little over 1,000. And I was like, how do we have, that's crazy. I mean, I don't even understand how that's a thing. But through that, I'd been doing little updates and just funny stuff or whatever. so I put that threadless shop up there so people could. So I guess I did kind of keep it going with that a little bit. But yeah, and people always ask, are you guys ever going to reunite? Are you going to put out the Monster Who Ate Jesus on vinyl? This, that, and the other. And basically, cruelly, I'm always like, we'll try. Yeah, hopefully, and it just
you shrug your shoulders. You're like, I don't know.
I mean, I've always, been open to it, but just kind of like, not sure when and if we can make it happen, and it's obviously hard transatlantically to do that. But just kind of, I don't know. Audio Feed had been asking for a few years for us to play, and Furnace Fest asked us, but last year, but I couldn't make it, and then that was their last year and stuff. And I've told this story before, but I wrote my brother and was just like, just double checking. I don't think you want anything to do with Blaster. He hadn't wanted to be involved with that for years, but I'm thinking of like playing this festival. Would you be interested in being in the band? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. I was like, no way. I cannot believe it. So I was like, that's awesome. So he's the one putting the band together out of people he knows in Philly and stuff like that, because that's where he stays.
Oh, cool.
Lives. But yeah, so it's pretty simple to start with. We're going to play that festival, but we definitely need to do a few warm-up shows. So we'll play a couple shows in Philly or thereabouts in the weeks leading up to that festival show. And then the plan is to play at least one other Midwest show while we're out for the festival. So hopefully a minimum of 4 gigs, maybe 1 or 2 others, but no big, it's not a tour. It's not, it's just, trying to make the most of actually putting a band together, not just for one show, but a handful of shows.
Oh, yeah.
And what time of year would that festival be?
That is July 4th weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's Audio Feed?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
In Urbana, Illinois, I think.
Okay.
So we're bringing it back to the Midwest. But yeah. So we'll play those. And like I said, my brother and I are going to write separate music together from all that. But once we establish that sort of thing, then I think we'll work on trying to get the Monster Who Ate Jesus on vinyl out in the following year. Because just between us, it's not good for us to take on more than we can do. So one simple thing at a time. This summer we'll play some live shows.
I get it.
Next summer we'll try to put out a vinyl. But if it goes well and we enjoy it and other people enjoy it and stuff, we're totally open to continuing to do a few just sort of reunion things, maybe get to some other parts of places where people can see us play. And then from there, I don't know if we'll, try to write new music or anything like that, or try to also, eventually I definitely want to get all those 3 albums, if you can call them that, officially up somewhere,
yes.
online and whatever, and hopefully physical copies of some sort if people want them. But yeah, so we'll work on that, and then we'll see about, making new music or something, because that can go either way. When an old band puts together new music, it can be very underwhelming, and I don't really want to bother with something that's underwhelming.
I hear what you mean. Well, we need Succulent Space Food on vinyl for sure, because my CD got stolen a long time ago. So
yeah.
I also do want to mention this.
Before
this meeting took place, I was talking with one of the promoters for Furnace Fest. Furnace Fest is coming back 2025. I was asked to see if you guys would be interested in playing Furnace Fest 2025. So
official invite.
Just know that that's been pushed my way, and
Okay.
So that's there.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. That's interesting to hear. Yeah, I mean, I definitely on paper we'd be interested, but I think the trick is going to be, isn't that like in the autumn or something?
It's October. Yeah,
October. Yeah,
right.
So that makes it really tricky, because I've been there in the summer, and then I would have to fly back again, and all that kind of stuff. So, so open to it. Thank you for letting me know. It's good to have that on my radar. Who knows? Maybe we can do it. It'd be cool if we could.
Yeah,
it'd be super cool.
Yeah.
You should consider it a gift to us. Above all, just do it as a gift to us.
Where is that one, actually?
It's in Birmingham. It's here.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right.
Cool.
At a very historical landmark here in our city, Sloss Furnace.
All right.
Yeah. So whatever we need to do to make that happen, let's make that happen.
To be honest, it's kind of built for Blaster the Rocket Man.
Absolutely. I mean, there's all types of ghost stories.
They used to do a haunted house in this place.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Remember the haunted house?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They did it's huge, but they did a gigantic haunted house in it and called it Sloss Fright Furnace. And so I mean it's the stage is set for Blaster the Rocket Man. So
are you saying Furnace Fest themselves did
the
haunted
city.
House? No, but on that site.
The city did this on that site for years.
Nice.
They don't do it anymore.
Cool.
And it was gigantic. But I mean, yeah, like we said, the stage is set.
But that does bring up a good idea.
Okay.
Can there be a haunted house during Furnace Fest?
If you come.
Yes, there will be.
It could be a Blaster hosted haunted house or something.
It's going to be themed and centered around your presence. I promise.
Yes, absolutely.
You could have like different things from different songs in there somehow or something.
Oh, dude, they'll sell werewolf masks.
Oh yeah.
They'll have. I'm trying to think of another one. They'll have they will have a man-eating plant, like a tiny one.
Nice.
Little vacuum cleaner for vacuum suck. They'll give those away.
Yep.
Right.
That'll be a keychain.
This can be a party for sure.
You really need to consider this. This is incredible.
Yep.
But
Cool.
yeah, we can't thank you enough for talking with us. This has been a thrill for us, and we look forward to whatever it is you've got going on in 2025. And we'll always be listening.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.